Hello, for I think it's about the third time today, YouTube. Bit more fun this time. I've got a very nice Transformer to review. This guy is Transformers Cybertron Starscream. Now there are two versions of this guy. There's this, the deluxe version, and there is an effing huge Supreme version. And I believe it's taller than Generation 1 Scorponok. It is just under the height of Fortress Maximus. It is enormous, and it's a wonderful, wonderful toy. However, I must admit, I prefer this one. I prefer this one because I think the deluxe size, it just suits Starscream more than a larger scale toy. I don't know, I prefer Starscream as a subordinate. The thing with Starscream is you don't want him getting any kind of power or authority whatsoever. He's come close to doing so numerous times in many continuities, and every single time he does, his megalomania and his arrogance they induce him to make a complete hash of it. He always gets ahead of himself or overrates his own abilities to the extent whereby his own troops end up turning on him, or he overrates his abilities and bites off more than he can chew, or something to that effect. He lacks the, I never thought I'd be saying this, but the equanimity of Megatron and the self-restraint. Megatron is not insane. That's the interesting thing about Megatron. He's not a lunatic, and he's not necessarily a megalomaniac. He is devoted to his cause. And yes, he is arrogant to a certain degree, but he's also aware of his own limitations, it seems, in a manner that Starscream most definitely is not. Now, this toy is interesting for a number of reasons. It's got a very interesting history. This is part of the Cybertron line, and the Cybertron continuity, the cartoon, is completely separate from Generation 1. However, this toy is actually designed after how Starscream appeared in the Dreamwave Generation 1 War Within comics. The War Within comics dealt with the war on Cybertron, how it began, where Megatron came from, and how he assembled the Decepticon movement. And this is Starscream Cybertronian form, how it appears in those comics, really down to a T. It is an absolutely perfect recreation of those designs. And it's absolutely beautiful. I think actually this is one of my favourite Starscream toys, with the exceptions of obviously the Masterpiece, but again, you can't compare the Masterpiece models to any of the more playable or commercially available toys, because they're just not, they don't exist on the same scale. And the Universe Classic Starscream, which I think is a brilliant piece of work. This is my favourite. It's gorgeously detailed. It's rife with painted and sculpted details. They are all over the thing. And it's also just a very beautifully designed Cybertronian jet. I think the principal difference in the aesthetic between this Cybertronian Starscream is his Starscream before he came to Earth, before he was reformatted to resemble a human-created jet. Is that this one, whereas the Earth version of Starscream, the Earthen Starscream, is very sleek looking, this is bulky and powerful. It also has a style, a design that is reminiscent of Generation 1 Transformers. It's incredibly heavy, weighty, and bulky in places, yet this doesn't detract from the overall look of the jet. There is a minimal of undercarriage kibble in comparison to Generation 1, of course. There is a bit, actually, though you can see the robot fists there, which is surprising for a Transformer from this era. Most of the jets from this era fixed that problem. But it is comparatively minor, considering just how wonderful the jet itself looks. And it is, of course, the classic Starscream colours. It's a wonderful bright red offset by grey, black and metallic hues. And there's also some translucent purple details on the windscreen and the missile underneath. The firing fucking missile. I wish they'd leave those off. We don't need them. This version is also much more heavily armed than all of the other Starscreams you're likely to find. Not only has he got his classic null ray cannons down the side of his wings, he's also got these guns here. He's got his cluster bomb launchers here. Very, very, very heavily armed indeed. He looks like he could do some incredible damage. which is quite pertinent, really. Starscream in the War Within comics is one of the more powerful Decepticons. He's really only overshadowed by the likes of Shockwave and Megatron himself. But yes, I absolutely love this mode. I don't really have that many complaints about it other than the firing missile. I could certainly do without that. And he does have a wee bit of visible head syndrome there. I mean, not that you can really tell from first glance, but that thing there is actually the robot head. I could have done with something to cover that up. But all in all, this mode is wonderfully successful. Right then, on to the transformation. And there we have the sheer magnificence that is Generation 1 Generation 1 Starscream? No, it's not. It's actually technically earlier than Generation 1 Starscream. It's, I don't call it Cybertron Starscream. I'm not that interested in the Cybertron toy line or continuity. This is War Within Starscream. War Within Starscream in his robot mode. And just like the jet mode, it has certain features that are reminiscent of Generation 1 Starscream, obviously derived from it. The face sculpt is very, very Generation 1 Starscream. It has these things here. Again, reminiscent of G1, the guns down the arm, the wings coming off the sides, and the colours, obviously, very, very reminiscent of G1. The only real difference is that it's bulked out. It's made to look much more brutal and heavy, which I really like. I think this is one of the quintessential Starscream toys. If you're a Starscream fan, you must have this, and it looks so wonderful next to the Universe Classic Starscream as well, since they do look as if they are related to one another somehow, and which of course they are. One is an evolution of the other. I've got to make note of the transformation of this guy as well, because it's very, very reminiscent of Generation 1. It's not complicated at all. It's very, very simple for a modern toy, but incredibly satisfying and ingenious, and I really like to see that. An uncomplicated transformation that works, and it's fun to do. I also love the joints of this toy. They're all rather than being on ball joints, they're all ratcheted and they're stiff, yet allow for an incredible range of posability, especially considering the bulk that's on his arms here. The general aesthetic of the robot is also just wonderful. It looks very, very manoeuvrable, yet at the same time very, very powerful and brutal. He does have a gimmick in this mode, like all the Cybertron Transformers. There's a little slot back there. I've lost the Cyberplanet key, but it doesn't matter. You can actually insert something into there, anything really. You can actually insert something into that little slot there, and it will activate. And all it does is bring two translucent purple swords down here, which is very nice. He has a pair of null swords, which is lovely. It makes him even more heavily armed and ready for some melee combat. Very, very nice. Like the War Within Starscream, his face sculpt is also much grimmer than his later incarnations. Later on, Starscream seems to go pretty crazy. He seems to go pretty insane. At this point, he's still got an element of lucidity about him, and he's still a wee bit more subtle as well in his attempts to take Megatron's throne. Whereas later on, he seems to give up to a certain degree. He carries on with his ambitions, but he doesn't care if Megatron knows about it and takes measures against him. If it's a choice between getting this one and the larger one, I would actually opt for this one. I do like the large one, but it's one of those Transformers that's so big it's quite difficult to play with. And of course it stands completely out of scale with all of your other toys, which is a bit annoying. Although it does have some lovely details. It does come with Starscream's crown from the Generation 1 movie, the 1986 animated movie, which he doesn't get to wear very long thanks to Galvatron. Well, yes, this is Cybertron / War Within, depending on your preference, Starscream. A very, very worthy purchase for any Transformer collector, I think. He's well worth getting because he looks so good. He displays so beautifully, and he plays very well as well, which is all you can ask for, really, isn't it?